Hi, everyone. So our next speaker for this room is going to be Nicole. Nicole is the Director of Population Health and Integrated Care Management. That's a title that even I don't have or get and probably don't understand. But Nicole is here to talk to us about how we transition into caregiving for an adult with special needs. Nicole, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Nice to meet you all. Welcome to your first post-lunch session. I hope we're in this weird virtual conference space, so it's weird we can't community lunch together, but I hope you had something good. My name is Nicole Cornell, and while I am a licensed clinical social worker by trade, and I do have 15 years of working in healthcare and case management experience, I'm also a caregiver of an adult with developmental disabilities. And she's recently transitioned from I can't call her a child, but a younger person into adulthood in the last several years. So I just want to say that I've been on this journey that you may be embarking on or supporting people who are embarking on. So I'm here maybe to share some trade secrets with you as we talk through today's content. And I just want to let you know, unfortunately, no cheat code, but I can give you some tips. So we're going to walk through that today. Really quickly, some objectives for today. We're going to highlight some differences between caregiving duties for an adult versus a child. Discover some community resources available to assist caregivers in that journey. Look at choices around adult caregiving, around housing, guardianship, and more. Talk a little bit first about some of the heavy stuff around decision making. In the state of Connecticut, when an individual turns 18, they're considered an adult, which has many implications, one of which being they're able to make their own decisions. For some individuals with special needs or developmental disabilities, assistance making decisions is needed. In this case, a petition or application for guardianship may need to be filed with a probate court in your jurisdiction area. This is typically done by the family or interested party. Typically it's parents, but maybe siblings, maybe extended family members in that area. The application may be for plenary, limited, or standby guardianship, and it's done to support the individual in the decision-making process. When reviewing the guardianship petition, the judge is considering whether or not the individual with developmental disability and their limitations around decision-making pose a threat to their safety, ability to access resources such as housing, health resources, that sort of thing that could pose a serious illness or injury if the guardianship was not put in place. Plenary or full guardians make all decisions on behalf of an individual, well, obviously by name. Limited guardians make certain decisions about certain aspects of an individual's life, while that individual retains other portions of decision-making aspects. That kind of decisions, that kind of line of dissertation is described explicitly in the guardianship documents. Standby guardians are put in place if there's an individual who makes their own decisions but might encounter an emergency situation where they need someone available to make these decisions for them and they don't have those informal supports in place. In my case, my sister-in-law's parents are co-full guardians, and her sister is the backup guardian in place as they are aging themselves and need some support in place for guardianship and decision-making. Housing. Now, as caregivers, we might think our family members and loved ones will always want to live with us. How could this not be the case? Unfortunately, it might not be true. So let's talk about our options. One hint here is there's always a wait list. First option we talk about are individual supports in your family or own home. There are supplements to these. So obviously the natural supports in our family home, informal caregivers, that sort of thing. But when we talk about supplements, these we'll talk about a little bit later through some of the waiver programs. There are supplements to informal and family members in their home. But talking about supportive housing combines private apartments with rental assistance and a qualified provider, The goal is to support independence and freedom with the safety of the individual. There might be support staff present in these apartments during waking or sleeping hours, or there may not be. There also might be assistive technology used in the apartments. Oftentimes, apartments are private, but sometimes they're shared as well. Community companion homes are a really creative solution we have in the state of Connecticut. They're licensed private homes in the state of Connecticut, where the individuals who are licensed, there could be individuals or families that are licensed and matched with individuals with developmental disabilities. Individuals with developmental disabilities live in these homes. It offers a community-based residential setting within a family environment. So this is the place where the individual resides. From there, they go to their employment or day support option, but they also have a plan of care or support plan in place so that the individual or licensee can support that individual and still retaining connection to their family of origin, social community, and other items while, if there's behavior support needed or other supports needed for that individual to thrive, they can do that. But it's good balance by still retaining kind of that family kind of network and support, but also fostering some version of independence. And then community living arrangements. We talk about these. We could talk about things more similar to traditional group homes that folks might be thinking about. Typically, these are 6 or fewer individuals residing in these homes. There's always 24/7 support staff in these houses. Folks receive nursing support through these, behavioral support, personal care, that sort of thing. Intermediate care facilities are another version of CLAs in the state of Connecticut. They typically support individuals with higher level of medical needs. So they typically house 4 or fewer, individuals at a time. And there are far less than there used to be ICFs in the state of Connecticut. One comment I will say is when my sister-in-law was transitioning out of the school setting and moving through her program into her day support program, one of the things her case manager really wanted us to put her on CLA wait lists and that sort of thing. And it was something that was really hard for us to wrap our head around. And I'll tell you, we're 8 years out and we still haven't added her name to any wait lists. I don't think it's something we'll ever be able to do. I think there are lots of great CLAs out there. Community companion homes, I think, is something we might consider in the future, just as we all age and we have to think about a time when we're not available to support her, unfortunately. But I think there are a lot of great, different, and diverse housing options. I think it all depends on the individual's needs, and how much support. My sister-in-law is someone that does not have any safety awareness, so she's not able to ever live independently. Supportive housing in the town in which I live, there's a supportive housing community here. Individuals have their own apartments. They have someone that comes and checks on them a few times during the day. They don't have anyone there at night. And those are really great options too. So it really matches the individual's level of need with their desire and want for independence. And I think that's a great thing. So a bit of a meatier subject, we'll get into employment and day support options. But before we begin to discuss this, I do want to make a mention that one assumption is being made on this topic. When we talk about employment and day support options, we're making the assumption that the individual with developmental disabilities has already engaged in transition planning with their school system and the Department of Developmental Disabilities. Oftentimes, individuals with disabilities remain in their transition programs until they're 21 years of age and don't shift into adult services until that time. It offers a bridge. It offers opportunity to get used to a different structured environment. I believe there's someone speaking at 250 specifically about transition services, and I would highly encourage you to attend that session if you're interested in learning more about that transitional period. But I did want to call that out because a lot of the specific services I'm going to talk about now are really specific to adult services, and they don't talk to those transition services. Connecticut put in place an employment first initiative. What this means is there's a commitment to ensuring individuals with disabilities who identify employment as their first and preferred option have support in accessing community-based integrated employment and services. This means individuals' case manager will work with them to make employment of the right fit a reality whenever and however possible. One tool to accomplish this is a job coach who supports an individual developmental disability in the community employment setting by helping them search for a job, interview, learn the new skills needed for that job, and have success in their new role. Job coaches can be really effective in many settings. They also do things like before they even apply for a job, they might do resume building with an individual. They might try out volunteer opportunities first. They might spend a lot of time getting to know the individual and what's important to them to try to do job matching with them. So job coaches are a really important tool. There are both day support options that can be vocational and non-vocational, or a mix of both. Non-vocational activities and settings might include things like we talked about: volunteering, recreation, community trips, educational sessions. My sister-in-law's day program has both structured morning classes, like they do yoga every morning. They do a sign language class every day. And then they have daily community outings. One of the really important things to her right now is they go and they pick up the bread from the local grocery store and they deliver it to the local soup kitchen. That's really an important part of her structure for her week, and she does it every day. They also do volunteer activities, and then they also have paid group employment all in one program. So day support can really be, a mix of whatever's appropriate and important to the individual. Like supported employment, non-vocational day support is structured by the individual plan and the level of need. Level of need tool is really important when it comes to Department of Developmental Services. You'll hear a little bit more about that from me later on. These tools determine the level of support the individual will receive in their day support setting and help the team understand how to best to support the individual in achieving their goals. I will say that there's different levels of support within day support options, everything from one-to-one support, small group, and then large group. Typically, you'll see in day support, depending on the vocational, non-vocational setting, you'll see different size groups, different size rooms with different types of goals for each kind of program and grouping happening. A really good day support option is going to spend a lot more time in the community than they are in a physical location or a building. And when you go to visit these places, you're going to want to ask them exactly that. Where are you in the community? What are you doing? What's your schedule like? They should have a really robust schedule and calendar that they can provide to you. And I think that's really important when you're interviewing these places. Transportation deserves its own call out here, because when we discuss transportation day support options, it's important to consider transportation when selecting a provider or site of care. First, transportation should be individual and separate in its budget, because it has to be both financially feasible and logistically appropriate to the location where the individual will be participating in their day support. You can find the best day support option for an individual that's 75 miles away. Do you want someone to spend 3 hours in the car every day? And do you have the funds in the individual budget to support that person to travel all those miles every day? Just something, it seems simplistic, but it's really important to consider every day. I think there are some great programs in the state of Connecticut that are sometimes overlooked because they might not be good. I mean, I will say that my sister-in-law has been at the same day program since she transitioned out of her transition program from school. And those folks are her second family for sure. Sometimes I think they're her preferred family. And if she could, she spends 7 days a week, not 5 with them. So I think it's really important when you're evaluating options to think about, again, what's the level of need an individual has, what are their preferences for how they spend their time, but also some logistical and simple operational things like, how much time is my loved one going to be spending getting to and from? Does their budget support that? How else are they going to be spending? Are the folks who work there and the staff, do they match your personality? One of the things we did was spend a lot of time going and visiting. We spent parts of days at every program, so we went at different times of day. It can be exhausting and feel invasive both to the site and also kind of uncomfortable at times, but it was really important to us. So I think that's important to note here. One of the most challenging problems for caregivers can be how to fill the gaps between when day support ends and their own work days might end. As individuals with developmental disabilities often can't be left alone for extended periods of time, and often the structured day program ends before the caregiver's own workday ends. As you can see, not much changes from the school hustle and bustle. I have young kids myself, and I know the time they get home from work, they get out of school, and the time that I finish my workday are not the same. Unfortunately, this doesn't really change when you transition from caregiving from a child to caregiving for an adult. So here's where sometimes supplemental community support through waiver programs can come into play. One of the most commonly utilized waiver programs for individuals with developmental disabilities is community first choice. It's based on the level of need for assistance an individual has, looks at hands-on needs. So things like bathing, dressing, grooming, feeding, assistance with ADLs, IADLs, that sort of thing. And it says how many of those areas or domains does the individual need assistance with, and it matches that based on, okay, this is the number of support hours the individual then is qualified for, and develop, again, another budget to manage. But once that budget is developed based on those needs, it's allocated to the individual or their representative, probably you as a caregiver, to hire support staff. In the state of Connecticut, that's allied resources. And often families and caregivers use those budgeted hours to supplement workaday programs. For myself and my sister-in-law, her day program ends at 3 o'clock. Whoever's the PCA for that day picks her up at her day program. They go and do things like they volunteer twice a week. They go to the library. When it's nice out, they go for walks, or they go to the local YMCA. They might, if it's not so nice out, then maybe they go to the movies and they spend a couple of dollars to go to enjoy something social that they like. The hardest parts about things, like we all know, is finding steady help. There are extensive, obviously background checks, insurance and things that go along with all this, but lots of similar through all these waiver programs. But it can work to help kind of fill that gap and make sure that there is appropriate safety measures in place. The PCA waiver program was around before community first choice. The difference between community first choice and PCA is community first choice does have also companion services available, though not often used. PCA waiver is for individuals 18 to 64 with, again, those hands-on needs for assistance to maintain themselves and their safety in the community. I'm not going to say a ton more here because they're very similar in nature. In my opinion, the wait lists and who has availability is typically, I believe, in my opinion, how people decide which program they're going to be on. Community first choice for a long time had more availability than PCA waiver, and so a lot more people were utilizing community first choice at that time. Do want to highlight the other three, though, and there are more, obviously, waiver programs in the state of Connecticut. These are the ones that I believe were most pertinent to this audience, but certainly happy to talk about any others if folks have questions. The Connecticut Home Care Program for the Elder, so this is on the other end of the spectrum, but something to think about in your long-term planning, as we'll discuss later, is for folks 65 and older who want to age in place in the community, which is the goal for the state of Connecticut. So folks, again, with those hands-on needs, who need assistance with bathing, dressing, grooming, eating, toileting, and have the ability to stay in their home to do that. They receive a budget and they can hire for help to do that. And again, that's managed then, but it can be hired by yourself. You can, I will say, with many of these waiver programs, hire family members to do this as long as they're not your guardian. You can hire your own family to do these things through Allied as the third party. So again, that's just the difference here is the age range. The autism waiver provides up to $50,000 per year to individuals with an IQ over 70, so they're not qualifying for specific other DDS services, but do have autism. So 3 and over up to 18. 3 and over, you have to apply before you're 18. Things like assistive technology, medical, non-medical transportation, personal emergency response system, even driving assessments, lots of things, behavioral health support, lots of things that can be paid for this waiver. A lot of people don't take advantage of this waiver early enough, in my opinion. I think a lot of younger parents with younger kids take care of this. Perhaps not the audience for today, but just did want to call it out here. And Katie Beckett, I know that somebody had a question, Christine had a question about this. This is really for folks with physical and or developmental disabilities that have more medical or hands-on needs related to, that might need services and benefit from services through a home care agency like physical therapy, occupational therapy, nursing needs. The services are typically furnished through a home care agency, and as well as case management services through that agency also. Again, these are for individuals 22 and under, and I would have to get back to you, Christina, on exactly if it's the year to date that they would have to transition to a different waiver program, but I believe they would then transition likely to PCA waiver or something similar, but I'll get back to you on that, Christine, for sure. So traversing social life as an adult without some of the formal structure of the education system that kind of provides that formal support through the school can be feel daunting both to the young adult and I think the caregiver or parent. So I wanted to share some of the programs and services that are in place to support both the individual and the caregiver. Everyone knows about, I think, Best Buddies through the school system, but Best Buddies Citizens is a program that's aimed at connecting both in one-to-one and also group friendships. There are 4 chapters throughout the state of Connecticut. They're pretty well spread out, and they do a lot of, they do in-person events. If you get matched with a good pair, you can do things individually together. eBuddies is a version of that, so they do virtual social events. It was great through COVID. We did a lot of they did like karaoke. I remember we participated in a karaoke one time that my sister-in-law got a kick out of, and on Zoom. They're very creative about how they do some of those things. So trying to foster those relationships both with other peers with developmental disabilities as well as peers without disabilities. So it's a nice way to foster some of those supports within the community. Special Olympics, which I know is well promoted and folks are very familiar with, but sometimes in Connecticut, I don't think people understand in every region there's different Special Olympics teams, typically through different organizations. So I live in Northwest Connecticut, so the local ARC organization in Litchfield County supports our Special Olympics teams. My sister-in-law has been swimming for many years now. She needs one-to-one support to swim, but they provide that. She doesn't do any of the competitions, but she looks forward to it every winter. They have everything from track and field to snowshoeing to swimming to bowling, the traditional, when you think of it, bowling, to bocce. So it's another way for folks to get out and get involved and stay active and fit. So I wanted to call that out. I think volunteering is a great opportunity for folks. Everything from, getting down to your local food pantry to local cleanup days. I call this out because it's not only a great way for individuals with disabilities to feel a sense of pride, feel a sense of, ownership within their community, but I think the more folks are out and engage in their community, the more opportunity it has for the community to really embrace them as well. So I encourage folks to always get out with individuals with disabilities and volunteer. Individual and family grants is kind of sometimes a well-kept secret, so I try to tell everybody I can about it. The Department of Developmental Services has grants for just about anything you could think of. Last summer we got free tickets to the Yard Goats games. They have sometimes targeted ones like, hey, we have science of museum tickets. Do you want them? Do you want to go to this baseball game? Or they say, well, if you want to go to summer camp, my sister-in-law went to Camp Hemlocks a couple years in a row. you can get a grant for that. Or if there's a special class like a dance class or something, and you want to get a grant for the class and somebody to take them for a specific time period, you can get a grant for that. So that's a really good way to foster an opportunity to do something special. And if the department has the funds to do that in their grant fund, they're willing to do that all through your case manager. We'll talk a little bit about DDS case management later. Lastly, but not least, for sure, Department of Developmental Services, too many S's, has a self-advocacy and engagement program. This is a really good opportunity for folks to get out, not only build social connections, but also develop their peer community and also learn advocacy skills. I think what you're hearing from me today is there's a lot that you need to know to not just survive as an adult with developmental disabilities or a caregiver of someone with developmental disabilities, but also just to get access to the things you need. So learning self-advocacy skills, what you need, what you deserve, is really important. And this is also fosters as a kind of a peer support network also. So looking into the DDS self-advocacy engagement program would be a great opportunity as well. So caregiver supports. We've talked a lot about kind of fundamental building blocks. We've talked a lot about kind of what are the have-tos, what are the things that are non-negotiables for your individual that, just to help them get through the day-to-day, to make sure that they are functioning, that they have a place to go, that they have a place to live, that they can make decisions or have supported decision-making for them. But without the cornerstone of a caregiver to help them do all those things, they're go nowhere fast. So a critical part of caregiving is self-care and knowing that you have the support you need too. The Department of Developmental Services offers respite services, so they're regional respite, just regional centers and respite centers. Respite services is an opportunity for individuals receiving support through DDS to stay overnight for 1 or several days, enjoy leisure activities, socialize with their peers, while their caregivers also get some relief and a break. Right, so the individual goes to the respite center, you stay home, maybe you go away too, maybe you take a night and you just go to a local B&B, or you stay home and you do something that you can't do when you have caregiver responsibilities yourself. Requests for respite stays are made through individuals' case managers, and respite stays are offered typically 2 or 3 times a year, depending on the interest and the availability in your local region. This is something my sister-in-law looks forward to. She talks about it literally from the minute she leaves the respite center from a stay until she goes back the next time. It's something that she really looks forward to. At a respite center, there are typically, from any time we've been there for a visit, there's usually, I would say there's never been more than 4 or 5 other individuals there. They really tailor it around. They usually ask when they walk, my sister-in-law walks in, what do you want to eat for dinner? What do you want to do this weekend? She brings a little spending cash with them. They always go out for at least a meal. They always go out for a bunch of activities. Sometimes they go to the beach if it's nice out. They go to the movies. They go bowling. They do whatever the individuals who are there are interested in doing. They cook whatever they want them that the individual says they want to eat. Staff there's it's really a respite stay for them to really just be themselves and enjoy themselves and do what they want. And it's also a respite for the caregiver. So I really encourage you to utilize that service. Case management, I've been referencing a lot, but I haven't talked about a lot, so I wanted to do that. So case management is another important tool, obviously, for caregivers of individuals with developmental disabilities. So this case management ensures that you and the individual that you're caregiving for have access to the support you and services you need and just deserve. So a DDS case manager is responsible for developing the person-centered plan of care for the individual and coordinating their care team, completing their level of care, developing the associated budget. They also assist in making sure that if needed, individual and family support resource teams are engaged. They can be extra resources like behavioral health support or nursing or other individual supports that can be offered in individual homes if someone's living in a family home setting. I will say that we have had a lot of case managers through our time, but every single one has been really helpful to us. Oftentimes you have to advocate in partnership with the case manager and within the Department of Developmental Services, but they really are able to liaison for you and with you. I say that as a case management professional myself. They, typically can facilitate a lot of referral, a lot of resource access, and they really are your primary tool and point of contact, and can really help when you're needing new resource, new access, new support for the individual you're caring for. A couple other caregiver support tools I want to make sure I touch on. DDS Family to Family Connections. This is through the Department of Developmental Services. Again, it's family support network type service where it's networking and support for individuals with similar types of families with individuals with developmental services. Again, similar, the Connecticut Family Support Network is a well-known service in Connecticut. They offer trainings that are specific for families and family members or caregivers, and also support groups. They're wonderful. They have sibling trainings, they have parent trainings, they have other caregiver trainings, and likewise, they have a sibling support group that's really powerful. So I encourage you to check those out as well. Long-term planning, which is kind of a heavy one to land on, but an important one. So I wanted to make sure we got to it today. So perhaps the most burdensome and sometimes overwhelming part of caregiving for an adult with developmental disabilities is the transition of benefits. While the fun task of annual Medicaid redeterminations persists, have you learned yet to make a copy of the last one you did and use it to fill out the one for this year? I hope so. Don't forget to update the dates. That's really important. As your loved one transition to adulthood, you have to consider how their new earned income might impact their Medicaid status, how you plan for when you're no longer able to care for them yourselves, and how you can possibly keep all of the forms straight. So here are some basics. Individuals with developmental disabilities are eligible for supplemental Social Security income due to their disability. They've been receiving this all along, right? When receiving SSI, individuals with developmental disabilities will likely require a rep payee. Likely this is you. To receive and manage their payments, including annual basic reporting on how their funds are spent. This might not be new to you. Rep payees are typically the individual's guardian unless another individual has been appointed for a specific reason or request. Of note, when an individual's parent retires, and this is sometimes what changes and what people aren't aware of when that transition to adulthood changes. If you've been the caregiver all along, but now you're aging along with your loved one. When an individual's parent retires, their unearned income source will transition from supplemental security income to SSDI, and it may also increase. Just something to be aware of. Additionally, as you're likely aware, there are state asset limits around Medicaid, which require close management of funds to ensure the adult you're caring for does not lose coverage. Thanks, Steve. If you spend too little, you'll be over assets. You spend too much, you'll be worried about the unexpected expense you might have next month. I just want to give a quick plug for ABLE accounts. They're newer. Some of you who live in this world are probably familiar with them by now. But it allows an individual with disabilities to save up to $17,000 a year, which is huge. We never were able to save any money for individuals with disabilities, right? It's through the ABLE Act. If you don't have time today, take a look over the weekend to ahead it. $17,000 annually saved without jeopardizing your Medicaid or other benefits. Another helpful tool, you probably are familiar with, a special needs trust. This allows family members to give inheritance to folks that are on state or other benefits without putting their eligibility at risk. So you set up a special need trust. You can make, like I have a life insurance policy, right? I can make my sister-in-law a beneficiary of that, her special needs trust a beneficiary of my life insurance policy without putting her benefits at risk, because she can use that, the special needs trust, to pay for things like supplementing her benefits, paying her bills, or enhancing her quality of life. So those are two specific things you can do to help plan for managing the earned income or Social Security income an individual has without, while planning for the future. Might know a good probate attorney who might be able to give you some advice around those things. But I just wanted to put a quick plug out for those things. Other tools that might be helpful: supplemental nutritional assistance. Folks might be eligible for, might not have thought about before, but as an adult, you might want to consider applying for those. You can do that right online through the state of Connecticut's Department of Social Services. Happy to share links and resources for those things as well. And as a good social worker, with my last minute before I open up to any questions, I have to say, advanced care planning for individuals with developmental disabilities should never be overlooked, whether they have a guardian or not. It's really important to be discussing and documenting how you want your loved one to be cared for should something happen to them in a medical emergency, especially as folks age, and there might be more medical complications for individuals with disabilities. And it's really important. If you don't know the documents or resources that you need to document their needs and what you want, how you want your loved one cared for, if you go to the state of Connecticut ct.gov and you look up advanced care planning, you'll find all the documents in one place. Please, please, please take a look for yourselves and anyone you care about. It's really important. It's something I talk about at work and in my personal life every day, and I behoove you to take a look, please. I tried to talk really fast, Steve. I don't know how I did. But we have a few minutes here for questions if folks have them.
You're doing great with the fast talk. We're fine.
Well, I'm from Connecticut,
That's the key, right?
Yeah. So I think one of the things when you talk about, when we talk about caregiving and if for an adult with developmental disabilities or special needs, I think I use the term developmental disability just because that's my comfort in my language. But and we talk about kind of how do you make that transition and how do you make sure you're supporting. And I talked a lot today about supporting yourself and making sure you're informed and being a good advocate. Sometimes we overlook the individual in that process, right? And their emotional needs as they transition from a child to an adult. And I think as both a social worker and as a family member, I have overlooked that myself before, right? There can be a gap. Sometimes the individual can get lost in that transition. And so I think one of the things I didn't get a chance to highlight today is making sure there is also an opportunity to, even if there's not, sometimes we talk about behavioral health support for individuals. We think about a behavioral support plan, right? We think about that need for individual special need or developmental disability. But I think when this transition happens for folks, there's a need to be attentive to their emotional health in this transition. And I think that's not something that's a strength of the system we have, at least in the state of Connecticut right now. I think if you go to, if you find a day support program that's really good, they do it informally. But it's something I call out to say families need to be attentive to that. Caregivers need to be attentive to that because with increased social isolation, decreased probably level of activity, I think folks with developmental disabilities are really prone to increased loneliness, increased depression, and we have to be really mindful of taking care of that because otherwise I think it can go unnoticed and untreated, and they're at high risk. And I don't think it's something we can, I can grab those links and put them in the chat. You got it. Maybe I just can't. There you go. So I just would call that out as maybe a last point for today and in my last couple of minutes here is that I think it's really important that we are mindful of the emotional health of individuals. I gotta put them in separate links here. The emotional health of individuals, both caregivers and individuals with disabilities, because I think both could be at risk at times of transition. That's my long-winded answer that didn't answer your question at all, Steve. Sorry.
That's okay. I'm a lawyer. I'm used to not answering things when I'm asked.
Okay, good.
So thank you, Nicole. It was really informative. I took a bunch of notes. So I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.